Hi my loves, welcome. This is Elina Oriel. I'm an energy worker, and today I want to talk to you about CERN because it's something that I have been asked from my perspective as an energy healer, as an energy worker, as someone who perceives energy and signatures and imprints. How do I perceive the whole thing with CERN? So CERN is really like this experiment that we have actually quite close to where I am. I am in Germany, and this is in Switzerland and somewhere over like these areas. So for us here in these parts of Europe, it's actually quite close to us. What they're doing is they have also since after 2012, they have this large hadron collider. And what it is doing is it's smashing particles, and they are trying to recreate the Big Bang Theory. They're trying to understand how the universe got created, how matter, energy got created. They're trying to find, the God particle, the boson particle and stuff like that. They found that, and then they started making it bigger and bigger and more specialized, shall I say, and I don't know by now what else they are looking for, but they're basically the explosion of energy that is happening with each smashing. They're trying to replicate it, make it bigger. They're trying to understand more and more about that stuff. So that's what they're telling us. If you have watched Stranger Things, the series, the episodes when they were showing that they were doing, kind of something, it looked like the Large Hadron Collider, by the way, also how they were presenting it in the series. They were showing how they were opening portals, basically. So with these explosions of energy, basically, they were able to rip holes into the morphogenetic field and opened portals, and things could go back and forth. And so you had other dimensions that you could access. So I think this is actually what they're doing. I think that a lot of people who work there, just like with people who work in the medical institution, in the military complex, many people, depending on the level of clearance that they have, they might not even know what exactly it is that they're involved in. And some of them might be fully aware of what it is they're involved in, and they have this perspective that it serves science. What I feel purely and clearly as a person that perceives energy is that this process that they're doing, it's very disruptive. First of all, for the planetary body, and also really for the morphogenetic field on the planet, on and around the planet. And I feel that the field is becoming very unstable. Right now, they're having this shutdown until 2030, if I'm not mistaken. They're shutting the Large Hadron Collider down for some years of maintenance, and also to build a bigger, better one. And they've been doing this building bigger, better one so many times. Actually, I did some research, and I'm going to put some links in the description. Number one, I'm going to put some links with the whole timeline of the whole CERN experiment. We started hearing more and more about it around 2010 to 2012, but actually this is going even all the way back to the 1950s. And actually the root organization upon which the whole CERN experiment ended up being launched, that actually goes even all the way back to the 1940s, 1949 to be exact. And so it looks to me like it's one of those plans by the New World Order that is actually spanning over decades, very hidden, very underground, especially when the populace is concerned with other things like wars and survival, quite frankly, and we cannot consent or raise objections. What do you want to do? You want to be smashing particles, causing energetic explosions that are ripping holes in the morphogenetic field? Do I get to say, no, I don't think that's a good idea? No, you never asked me. Meanwhile, you guys, I'm going to put a link for that too. This is an environmental scandal. The amounts of energy and garbage also insane. I'm just going to put a video. It's in French, but you can go to the subtitles, and also you can go to the audio and change, let's say, to English. YouTube has this feature currently where you can have a video be translated, even the audio, in the language of your choice. English worked quite good for me. I was able to understand what the video was saying. I feel that this whole thing with CERN, looking at the timeline and looking at my own personal timeline, I realized, and I was given to understand even from my spirit team, that the emanations from these activities of CERN, they are actually able to hijack timelines. And specifically, I was shown if a timeline is moving like that, whoop, there's an explosion. So now this timeline is moving whoop, it's going this way now. So we're in a completely different timeline. Then another one, whoop, now we go into this one. So it can mess with timelines. This is quantum timeline manipulation, quantum entanglement, and even scripts of sorcery shouldn't be there. We should be able and allowed to proceed on our organic, authentic timelines. for me personally, I've seen that every time there's been these switches, switch on, switch off, there's always like these huge shifts in my life characterized by extreme challenge. And it's as if during the years that the experiment, or shall I say the collider has been switched off, these are the years where I feel like I've been on my best timelines, and I'm feeling like I recognize myself, I recognize my values, I recognize my timeline, I know what I'm doing, I feel connected, and it feels like, oh, I'm back to my timeline. Mind you, this insight already before even knowing about CERN and really looking deeply into what's going on with it and finding this timeline and understanding like that for myself. And again, that's a personal observation for me when I observe the CERN timeline and my own personal timelines. I invite you to check with yourself, with your own personal timelines. Like, does it correspond every time they were switching it on or off? Does it correspond with, let's say, shifts in your own timeline in your life? Like, oh, year 2008 to 2000, whatever. What was I doing? How did that feel? I'm not talking about, like separate individual events. Like, oh yeah, this bad thing happened. Don't try to be like assigning bad things to CERN being switched on and off. No, I'm talking about a frequency and a signature that is all over. It's like plastered all over your experience over a specific number of years. That's what I'm talking about. When I asked my spirit team, is this accurate what I'm observing? Or am I maybe, projecting and I am biased or whatever? And my spirit team actually said, yeah, indeed, it does affect and influence the timelines on the planet and the timelines of the collective. And so it doesn't necessarily affect the timelines of individual people as much as it works like a blanket signature. And so it affects the collective. And of course, we are in the collective. So the kind of stuff that are happening for the collective, they end up influencing and affecting our own paths too. If there is unemployment, because suddenly we have a huge financial crisis globally, that boils down to you too eventually, and you find your path changing. Of course, always, we have our divine protection. And for me in my life, and I have to say it, I'm just so grateful that I've seen that through everything, through the thick and thin, through really, really challenging things, through poverty and homelessness and moving to another country and being, abused by the partner that I had at the time, and then ending up again losing my job 2 times. One time losing it because my boss at the time was a pedophile and I called him out and I lost my job. All the way like 180 degrees shift to just bouncing back up and building my own businesses, building my own music studio, my production company, finding, my spark again. Also in between somewhere almost surviving disease and almost dying from it due to misdiagnosis, and just coming back with such force that I actually healed that, and I don't even have that. Nearly 10 years down the line, we're still here, and thank God that thing got flushed out of my system. All of these different, eras and things, and when I looked at the timeline, I always found these correspondences, and I found that very, very interesting. And so what I'm trying to say is also that despite whatever elites or technocrats or scientific cults are, making experiments, and they're experimenting and, messing up with the timelines and the energy and the people, ultimately we have protection. Our spirit teams, our spirit equivalents and aspects, our spirit families, they protect us and they guide us. So eventually we do find our path. But it doesn't mean that we don't experience, like through such initiatives like the CERN situation, it doesn't mean that we're not experiencing also timelines that are inorganic, and we might have had, a different trajectory if these influences had not been involved. I found interesting that the day that they shut it down, it was the 29th of June. We had a full moon in Capricorn, if I'm not mistaken, and Mercury was stationing retrograde in Cancer. I find this Cancer-Capricorn axis also very interesting. I feel that the elites are using certain scientific events also to mark certain energy milestones as well. They harness such events and they harness energies that are happening astrologically and otherwise collectively. They siphon and they harness that energy. I feel, it's my perspective, what I've noticed. They funnel all of this energy, fueling it into events and how they want certain things to turn out. We know very well that there's this whole Agenda 2030 being discussed a lot, and there's a lot of occult background also in regards to what they do, what they engage in order to harness the energies to push forward and prop up energetically certain inorganic timelines. sense. So in all of that, we have to remember that we have the power of consent. I do not consent. And also engage in prayer. I found that this has been very helpful for me these days, just engaging in prayer and saying, really, I do not consent to quantum entanglement with antichrist agendas and forces. I do not consent to quantum manipulation, like of my matrix and template, of my quantum matrix and my manifestation template. And specifically, I do not consent to interferences on my manifestation or my quantum matrix pertaining to, and go ahead and list the kinds of challenges that you have noticed that you've been experiencing each time there's been like this shut on, shut off, how that has been, reflected in your timelines. Please remember, your word is your sword. Please remember that the power of like commanding reality is really one of the strongest weapons we have. This CERN situation, I've always been perceiving it clairsentiently and clairvoyantly even. I've been seeing and sensing this pulse, like an inorganic pulse and like a low frequency pulse specifically that is just broadcasting out there, this chronic underlying like anxiety, depression, like as if something is being broadcasted. And I've spoken here through the 6 years that I've been having Elina's Alchemy. I've been talking even about times when I felt like, oh, today the energy is very particular. It feels like they have switched something up, like they have amped something, and it feels like it's a frequency, it's a broadcast. And sometimes these broadcasts, they are addressed towards specific demographics. There are many different, programs that are dealing with the same thing, from HARP and DARPA and things. Even the patents are out there. You can see that they have patented these kinds of technologies, and specifically those that go and affect actually the brain waves of the populace. You have thought forms being projected onto whole demographics. You have even pulsations and kinds of energies that are directed to certain areas and cause earthquakes. You see the weather modification warfare we're dealing with over our heads. All of these aluminum, strontium, barium, all of that stuff that are just falling down from the skies and polluting, our atmosphere, our soil. And it doesn't just stop there. These are neurotoxins. When we breathe them, our brain, bodies, but also our mental and psychological health, it gets completely out of whack. And also there's even parasites and all sorts of weird stuff in that. I mean, I've seen research that people are actually taking materials and analyzing them in the lab. And parasites, even Morgellons. I remember specifically a very interesting discussion by Barbara Hand-Clow. She was talking about that and how all of these things, these parasites, they are being sprayed basically onto the populace and then paired with broadcasts of energies and pulsations that are of course so low that you don't hear them audibly, but your brain picks them up. And so then you have this technology basically coming in and aggravating or working in tandem with the various, environmental toxins and parasites and all of that stuff. And so I've been feeling that CERN has been broadcasting for years now a very, very disruptive frequency that has been affecting negatively the planet, has been affecting our ability to connect with the higher multidimensionality levels. And every time they switch it off, I feel like humanity is progressing in leaps. And they try to balance it out by throwing, a pandemic, a war, so that if you don't have that thing basically pulling you down, they put something else out so that your attention is turned there and you're watching, let's say, very upsetting things that are happening around, and so your frequency is compromised that way. So the way I see it, I think it's a fantastic event, the fact that it's been shut down for now. Of course, they're shutting it down only to rebuild it, and to rebuild it 5 times better. They say when we will be back, this thing will be able to smash particles with 5 or 10 times the power and generate 5-10 times stronger emanations. I was talking in my Sacred Alchemist membership in the Planetary Stewardship series of classes, which is about energy healing for the planet, for the land, how you can be doing basically planetary grid work and clearing, Earth from earthbound spirits, from all sorts of distortions in the morphogenetic field. I was talking about energy imprints, but I was talking also about pockets, networks, grids, and tunnels even. So when you have events that are of course, like wars and even bombs and stuff like that, they can rip holes into the field and they can create tunnels and they can create whole networks of these tunnels and energy pockets and false realities or hibernation zones. I feel that they are creating dimensions within dimensions, and there's so much nefarious stuff and even political stuff that are taking place in all of these different structures. This is antichrist architecture, and as a grid worker you can track that down. So for me personally, that's just my perspective. I'm not trying to convince anybody about anything. That's just me, what I've observed, and because you guys asked me what do I think about the CERN shutdown, this is my perspective, that it's great that we're going to have these years to really tend to our connection, to really get going with a lot of the things that, you know, we couldn't do before because our timelines were being hijacked, and many of the good things that were trying to be birthed into the world, they were being blocked. One thing that I feel, and I haven't heard anybody say this until now, like I've heard many opinions from people writing me, I think it's this, I think it's that, what do you think, Elina? So one thing that I haven't heard anybody comment on until now is something that also my spirit team gave me to understand, like when I was kind of like remote viewing, and I don't know if I should call it remote viewing, because for me how it works is I meditate on something, I quiet down all of my processes, and I start to receive knowingness and downloads. So and then of course I might see some things, but mostly it's whole streams of information that are coming to me. So it's not always like this classic remote viewing kind of thing. But for lack of better word right now, when I was looking into this issue, what I saw is that I don't want to call them elites, but let me say the powers that are not anymore, but are still holding on to whatever power they can, even though they're being ousted by the God forces that are reclaiming our world. And right now, you know, they're kicking and screaming and trying to show as if, no, we're still here. We still have power here. It's interesting what they've been doing, but I've been shown that they don't have access anymore to certain resources, and that until 2030, where they're planning to come back, they will not manage to come back. There's a strong possibility that they will not make it. Something else will have beat them to it. This is what I heard. And something else, what? Something terrible? No, something actually that ousts them, makes the whole project obsolete, because it's revealed what it was about. And this is a timeline possibility. I hope we get to see it. I've been getting since 2025, and I think I kind of mentioned it in one of the earlier Sacred Alchemy sessions in my membership back then. I think it must have been January or February 2025, where Spirit was saying, you know what, they have lost access to a really serious resource that was giving them the ability to harvest and to harness energy from the collective, and without that they can't keep certain things in place. So that could link also now into the CERN situation, could also not be. I just somehow, when I think of the CERN, my mind keeps on going back to that message I had received in 2025 about they have lost access to something that was like a weapon, like a tool, and they cannot do it as they had been doing it for this whole time. This frequency oppression of humanity on the planet by means of technological harassment, electronic harassment. And just as a reference, lately I noticed that there was a particular broadcast that was directed specifically towards women between the ages of 28 and 35. A kind of broadcast, it was like a negative thought form, but it felt more like a inorganic holographic insert that was seeking to hijack the organic timeline of this particular demographic, women between ages 28 and 35, to hijack it with what? With assault scenarios, all kinds of assault scenarios. The way my team showed that to me was very particular, and I was instructed to sit down and start doing clearing work on behalf of the collective as well. That thing was trying to hijack my timeline, but when I looked at it, I was actually told, no, don't take it personally. It's not about you. You are part of a demographic that right now they are targeting with this particular broadcast. So sit down and clear it on behalf also of the demographic group that you belong into. We do not consent to inorganic manipulation and hijacking of our organic timelines. We are God, we are sovereign, we are free. We are authority over our lives and nobody else. And I find it very interesting how the powers that should never be, and they're being ousted, they have found all sorts of ways to train us into accepting such kinds of, things as a norm, kind of like, oh yeah, of course, like another power or something outside of you has power over your own timeline. We see this when we're looking at what has become of mainstream astrology. Oh, right now Saturn is retrograde, prepare for this and that. I'm like, no, I do not consent. It's like, Pluto is gonna go retrograde, so better hold that thought for later. And I'm like, no, I do not consent. I'm sovereign. I do not consent to have Pluto or Saturn or personal planets or any other hijacked, actually, celestial bodies determining what I'm going to be doing, or like, no, don't move now because the energy is not supportive. Move now because the energy is supportive. Yeah, move now so that now they can harvest the energy. So this is very, very controversial, I understand, because there's a whole, portion in the spirituality community that does life by observing very closely lunations and planetary movements. And that's not to say that I do not respect astrology. I've studied astrology, and until last year, I was also giving astrology consultations, until I realized, what, I would rather be teaching tools so that we can step into greater sovereignty and authority instead of, this is what the energies are like, this is what the broadcast is right now from these hijacked planetary bodies, because most of these planetary bodies, they have been hijacked. I'm talking all about that in my membership, in my series of classes called Antagonizing Forces, how our planet got invaded and the planetary software got changed, and not only of our planet but also of other planetary bodies. They were hijacked and implanted with consciousness broadcasts that were very detrimental, and with planet Earth being here and another planet being here, you could be using other planets to broadcast detrimental signatures onto planet Earth. And so I'm explaining about that, and I'm explaining about how we can come out of that. So I'm noticing that also with the pandemic, that when they were telling you, now you are allowed to go out, now you're not allowed to go out, same thing. It's like as if always placing like something above you, telling you, now you can go, now you can't go. And now the communities at large, even in spirituality, they're talking in the same sense, like, oh, CERN is shut down, now we can go. When they turn it on, we will have difficulties again. I say no. During these years, we have to really work with ourselves to come to a place of sovereignty so that we are not abiding by such rules. There's something also about quantum entanglement that I was given, that it's not entirely accurate or true, and that it is one more of these made up rules that they presented to us, and they present to us such rules like through scientific discovery and scientific, like a statement and confirmation. It's like, oh, there's such a thing as quantum entanglement. If you are, in that space, you are entangled with that and with that. No, this is something that is not true, but it becomes true when they present it to you as a universal natural law. So then you accept it. So then you say, yeah, that applies. So you recognize something that other than that doesn't exist. But if I tell you that's true, it exists, it is a thing, and you say, okay, so you take it on and you make it exist. So that allows them, the negative factions, that allows them to pull you into quantum entanglements with their own negative timelines, with the timelines that they are broadcasting through their various, experimentations, and the CERN is only one of them. So by entangling you with that, it's like they have access to your energy. So that completely hijack the entire conversation over sovereignty. Because we can be saying all we want, I am sovereign, which means you don't have access to my energy. But then they say quantum entanglement is a thing. And if we are in the same space or we are interacting with something in common, then you have access to me, I have access to you. So you take this as a truth, so now your whole sovereignty declaration is out of the window because you have this new thing overriding the sovereignty declaration, so to speak. We have to be very careful with what kind of beliefs or narratives we take, or scientific laws and rules that are being presented to us as scientific discoveries, because ultimately there is this attempt basically to hijack the consent through belief systems. When I present something to you from a scientific background, like there is gravity, you believe in gravity too, right? You believe it. Why? Because it's taught as a scientific, discovery. I'm not disputing gravity here. Don't get it wrong. I'm just mentioning it to help you understand the equivalent. And so this is how I view this whole CERN situation. I think that it's giving us an opportunity. You feel it. The energy is so different. There's been a lot of intensity on the days around the switch off. There was a lot of warfare as well. And there was kind of like a jump, like a jolt in the energy. But now the days after, 2 weeks after, the energy feels very different. To me, it feels like the timeline before they switched it on in 2022. This is what it feels like to me. And let me know in the comments if you agree. The last years have shown a lot about where we are headed for those who are able to see, not for those who see the world events as they are presented exoterically out there. But for those who are able to see and understand the esoteric behind the exoteric, I think that we can see and understand where the game is headed. We see the reclamation of our world by the God forces and the ousting of negative forces. We see disclosure. Although not all disclosure is positive, a lot of disclosure is just one more smokescreen situation, and disclosure in itself is being weaponized. So I think that the truth resonance and that frequency, it's important that we learn to discern it for ourselves. Spiritual maturity will be required of us at this time, versus just wanting to approach spirituality and spiritual and energetic sovereignty, as a hobby, as an entertainment, as something that we do on a Friday evening just to chill, or as a trend that is popular on social media right now. Avoid sensationalism, avoid things that just don't resonate with where you are at, and keep drilling on having a specific kind of wellness routine, if I may say, something that grounds you and anchors you into relationship with the self and with the divine through the self. And I think we're going to be okay in the next years until 2030. I think one of the greatest revolutions and revelations for humanity is going to be underway. And so, my loves, this is my perspective. Let me know your perspective on the CERN situation in the comments below. This is an open discussion. I am in no way trying to say that I know everything. I'm just telling you as a first, reflection on this whole topic. This is what I'm picking up on. And I, again, want to return to the point about this pulsation, this frequency, this signature, that it's been there. And I started feeling it in 2022 after they turned it on again. And it's been nonstop, 2022, 23, 24, 25, 26 until now. Now it has stopped. It has disappeared. I cannot trace it anymore. Where did it go? Coincidence? I think not. Suddenly, I'm able to connect with other things that were being covered up by that very annoying broadcast and frequency that was there. For me personally, I never tied it with CERN until now. But what I thought it was stemming from, I thought it was from the Russia-Ukraine war, because I remember how I was feeling as I'm feeling now. And then February 22nd, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. And I remember that I didn't even know about this, but I woke up at 5 a.m. and I couldn't breathe. And I was feeling like something awful happened. And I opened the news, so to speak, on my phone. I don't have a TV. But I look at my phone and the news, and it has been announced that the first bombings had started in Ukraine. And we're in Germany. This is a war that is happening quite close. Since then, I've had enormous difficulty to calm, to connect, to continue to dive into earth and into the morphogenetic field. And I've had to develop so many workarounds in order to be able to do my work as I was doing it. And so now suddenly CERN is shut off. Suddenly this vibration, this whole blanket signature is not there anymore. And suddenly, it feels so much easier to just cut through. Now I don't need all of my workarounds, but I'm very happy that I developed them in the meantime. And so I'm talking about all of these things and more in my membership. So I would be happy to see you there if that's something that interests you. Generally, learning how to interact with the morphogenetic field in a manner that you can clear distortions from it. I think at this time, reclaiming our planet energetically is very important, because you see how much warfare our planet, our sweet, sweet planet, is receiving from everything to control the consciousness on planet Earth and to continue, the consciousness suppression. And we are active components, boots on the ground, of the process of clearing the planet from these influences, at the same time as our divine counterparts in the higher multidimensional timelines and stations of identity are also working on other dimensions, clearing and doing all sorts of reclamation work as well. And so this is my perspective, and I hope you are all doing well. I love you all, and I send you much joy and appreciation. I will see you next time, hopefully here on Elina's Alchemy. Until then, goodbye for now.